in the chat. I'll tweet it out.
Okay. It's getting set up, but I think we're live now. Waiting for the link to pop up. So if people are watching the recording, just hang out for a minute. We'll get started here shortly.
All right. I'm going to tweet this out.
Nice. Okay. I will put the link in the Telegram chat as well. Okay, looks like we're live.
We'll send it out to Roots app too, even though most everybody's in the same group right now.
Yeah, a lot of cross-pollination here. All right, well, welcome everybody to the bi-weekly Permissionless Software Foundation Technical Steering Committee meeting. My name's Chris Troutner. I'm joined by these lovely fellows here. Let's go around and do a quick introduction. I'll start. My name's Chris Troutner. I'm a JavaScript developer. I helped found the Permissionless Software Foundation, and I maintain the fullstack.cash infrastructure as a service for businesses who need infrastructure for interacting with the Bitcoin Cash blockchain. Aaron Shoemaker, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name's Aaron Shoemaker. I'm part of the PSF's Aaron Army, because there are so many Aarons in the PSF. And right now I'm working on building up a IPFS cluster and then using PSF software to make it decentralized, and it's bootstrapping and all that sort of stuff, working with the tokens, working with the NFTs. I do a lot of work in the metaverse, and I'm trying to bridge the two technologies, essentially.
And making great progress. Yeah, Aaron Cool Cleaner, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Greetings, Aaron Sudman. Big fan of the Permissionless Software Foundation since I found it. I don't know, just one time, I don't know, I must have seen a tweet from Chris or something and just have loved the idea of permissionless software innovation, because the gatekeepers are going to keep you out unless you find a way to make something permissionless. And the software you're putting out as a part of this has been fantastic. So I'm proud to be a part of it.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Stoyan.
My name is Stoyan Zhikov. I help with some of the examples for the BCH JavaScript library. That's all.
Right on. All right, well, with that, I'll share my screen and show the agenda. All right, here is the agenda. So just like every meeting, we post our agendas on GitHub at github.com under the Permissionless Software Foundation GitHub group in a repository called TSC for Technical Steering Committee, and we file them as issues. And that way everybody can get to the links. So the scope of the meetings are to cover sort of the really, it's a chance for us to celebrate our technical achievements every 2 weeks. And the meetings tend to focus on the core technical software behind the PSF. There's a short list here, and there's a longer list at cachestack.info, or I'm sorry, at psfoundation.info. There's a link further down in here. So I mixed the agenda up. I moved the token deck stuff up to the top so that we could, some of this stuff was in the last meeting's agenda that we didn't get to. It was a really good meeting last meeting. We covered psfoundation.info, the link's right here. And I incorporated a lot of the constructive criticism and really healthy feedback that I got from you guys in terms of the layout and how to structure things. So really appreciate the input that you guys gave me. But because we were so focused on that, we kind of skipped a lot of the new stuff around NFTs and the decks. So I want to focus on that in this meeting first. So yeah, there's a demo of the decks at decks.fullstack.cash. And if you click, there's a sort of a warning here. You click through the demo. This is just a read-only demo. You can't actually trade with the demo. All you can see are the tokens that are listed in the decks right now. So I listed some tokens this morning. So I've got a couple Tether listings for $1 and for $5. Some PSF tokens. Got some Trout tokens listed for 2 cents, just for anybody who wants to try. the actual trading process. And then I've got this NFT at the top listed for $10. This is this TV001. This is the very first NFT that I've created. And I wanted to sort of show this off to you guys. So if you go to troutnfts.com and you give it a minute to load, this is loading NFTs right from the blockchain, and it's utilizing the mutable data. And so I only have this one NFT that I've created, but as I create new NFTs in the future, this page will automatically populate. I don't need to update the page itself at all. It'll just automatically detect new NFTs and populate them.
Awesome.
So if you click on the token ID here, it'll open up this window at token.fullstack.cash, and we can dig into this immutable data. So this is a good sort of continuation of what you guys covered in the Roots Up episode last week, where you guys were doing some mutable data stuff. So in the immutable data, it's pretty sparse because it's just information that can't be changed. I actually have a license associated with this NFT, so that went into the immutable data portion. And it's just a copyright saying that it's Creative Commons, but also there is this is kind of a mashup between the Creative Commons license and a license I got from another artist that I talked to, who adds this part that says, basically, there's a certificate of authenticity and you have to pay me 10% of secondary sales in exchange for updating the certificate of authenticity. And so that's how I'm leveraging the mutable data portion. So it's nice is that license file is the immutable part. So that license will never change, and it is forever a part of the token. And so right now in the mutable data portion, so this is all data that I can update. Whoever buys this token will have the token, but I will retain control of the address that can change the mutable data. And so this is functioning like a certificate of authenticity. So I have this current owner section. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. And so I'll update this information to whoever buys it, and then comes to me and says, yeah, hey, I bought it. Can you update it? So I'll be able to update this information. And then the dynamic portion of the web app is this content. So I have the video copied to all these different platforms: YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, Library, IPFS, and Filecoin. And so the web app, what it's doing is it's pulling down that data. It's expecting that field in the mutable data, and it's populating these links. So the whole idea behind this NFT is you're not really buying the NFT to get exclusive access to it. You're buying it to essentially support the artist, in which case it's me in this case. And so every time I create a video, I'm going to turn it into an NFT, and I'm going to throw it up for like $10. And I'm going to add a buy now button. That's a new feature that I want to add to the DEX, where this NFT is already like segregated into its own address with its own UTXO, and it's being monitored by the DEX. So I want to add a buy now button that will essentially make an API call. And so like if you basically send the money requested to the address, the DEX will detect that and send the token to the address that sent the money, to create the sort of buy now feature. And then I'll add information down here too about like the current owner, because a lot of the reasons why people buy NFTs is just to get that sort of social proof, or the recognition. Like they're buying it to support the artist, but it's also the artist needs to recognize their supporters, and so it creates this relationship.
So Chris, you mentioned this site will update automatically.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this will be just part of one group according to the first line, and you just index this group, right? And just show the new child.
Yeah. So this is the group ID up here. And then so I use that group token to create new children NFTs. And so, yeah, so this is a new feature that I added to the PSF SLP indexer. SLPDB used to have this feature too, to where you can query a group token. Actually, if I just click on this link, it'll pull it up. Give it a second. So part of this Genesis data, it might not be displaying it. Let me pull it up. Another, if you go to fullstack.cache explorer BCHN, this is a way to interact with the BCH API. And this is essentially, so this is kind of, I'm kind of hacking it right now, but let me put this token ID in there. And what we'll see is that it returns a list of all the child NFTs. Right here, NFTs. So every time so there's only one listing, but every time I create a new NFT from this group token, this array will get populated with the token ID for that NFT. And then if I look up the NFT, there's a group token field that points back to the group token that created it.
It looks like on troutnfts.com, for each one of those, it actually goes out to the mutable data, looks at that JSON and puts the content links there automatically, stuff like that, so that we can, it seems like a nice, seems like a richer capability than most NFT platforms. I mean,
yeah,
I mean, the ability to pull that stuff in and do that.
Yeah, so it's a fairly simple thing, and this is just sort of showcasing. I'm going to go into some of the little minor updates here and there that had to go into place to make this work, but yeah, this is just an example of, you know, I honestly think like this could be a new way to do social media. Like you could have an NFT that's like your profile information. You could have an NFT that is like your feed posts. And so a page could just simply like do a bunch of these data lookups on a series of tokens.
It's already done. It's basically the Aave Lens protocol.
Mm-hmm.
It's doing exactly this thing.
Yeah. So, and so that's actually a pretty good segue into, what allowed me to do that is this update to Minimal SLP Wallet. So Minimal SLP Wallet can use both our Web 2 or our Web 3 infrastructure. And so it's like this layer that abstracts away, like at some point you have to choose whether you're going to use Web 2 or Web 3, but as an end consumer, you don't want to think about that. So Minimal SLP Wallet has these hooks that let you just set that at the beginning, whether you're going to do Web 2 or Web 3. And so I added these two new functions to it. And one of them is this get token data. So you just need to make one call and it'll get, because that actual lookup process of looking up the mutable and immutable data associated with token requires like a series of API calls. And so that all sort of happens under the hood now, happens on the server side. And so you can just make this one convenient call to get that data. And so I'm hoping to see more sort of variations on this theme of ways to use token data to do things like you know, like I like a Craigslist. Like this really brings us into the realm of social media now.
Right.
Like anything that you could do that would be like a Twitter feed or Facebook or Craigslist or you know, Instagram. Like these can all be done with tokens now that we have this sort of data outlet for them. So that's basically what's up with the DEX. Yeah, I want to add that buy now capability, but I really need to get working on porting the DEX to Avalanche and eCash. I really need to get that off my plate. So there's so many exciting things that I'm focusing on that I keep justifying like pushing it down there, but I gotta really tackle those things before I add any more features.
Chris, can I ask here? It's maybe related. Do you remember the previous week in the Telegram? I think somebody was asking about a piece of the code in the NFT related JavaScript, like NFT1.js in BCH.js. So are we processing like different type of UTXOs because in this code, you are checking for two types of baton-based UTXO. One of them is with a type like minting minus baton, and other is just baton. Or do you remember this conversation?
Vaguely. I think they were asking about how so let me just pull that up actually. It's
if I
the
can
get
share my
call.
screen, I have this on my screen.
Oh, sure.
Show it immediately,
Go
because
ahead.
I think maybe it's related to this conversation. I'm not sure. The piece of the code is this thing. It's part of the BCH.js, and more specifically the NFT file, this one, NFT1. So this part here seems like we are checking here this type, like you get the UTXO. If you check if UTXO type is minting baton, and there's also this thing which is different.
Yeah, so the baton is left over from SLPDB, and then the minting baton is the PSF SLP indexer. So depending on which indexer you get your data from, that's why there's an OR.
Yeah, because they was mentioning that if you filter first the UTXO here with this filter function, you already will have only this thing. So there is no point to have one more check here. But listening now, it will be like processing also the other type of.
Yeah. So this is just an artifact of legacy software. So it's like, well, it was just like that was already there, that check for the baton. So I didn't want to remove something that might still have some functionality, because there are a handful of people that have still managed to keep SLPDB functioning.
So there's nothing to do with the current conversation about different like eCache and AVAX. It's not for this. It's just legacy from the previous iteration.
Yeah.
Okay. I will stop share now, so you can get the screen again.
Okay. So that's basically where the DEX is at. It supports NFTs now. It's a little clunky. If anybody wants to sell NFTs on the DEX, like reach out to me and I'll let you know where some of the warts are at this point that you got to watch out for. There's if you're a JavaScript developer, there's definitely ways to get around it and make it functional. But if you're not a JavaScript developer, it's pretty tough. Like right now, just stick to fungible tokens. But it is possible for people who really want to push through.
What was that website you were making the calls to again?
Well, there's troutnfts.com that is my NFTs. And then there's token.fullstack.cache, which is like an explorer for these tokens.
Was the other one just like the API calls?
Yeah. There was fullstack.cache/explore-bchn. And so this lets me interactively work with the REST API for BCH API.
Right from there, or do you have to do that in the command line wallet?
No, right from here, right from this web
nice.
page. Yeah, right from this web page. So
I didn't know for sure.
Yeah, so like the PSF SLP section, that's interacting with the PSF SLP indexer, so I can. So
it's similar to the Etherscan, where you can interact with the contracts.
Yeah. This is actually modeled after Swagger, which is it's the same idea. It's a web page that lets you interact with a REST API.
Seems somebody's not reading documentation. Aaron, you never read the documentation for PCF. It was always been like this one.
Okay. Yeah. Well, now Storian's calling me out here.
Yeah. You need to read the documentation, man.
I'm sorry. I've been deep in the weeds in IPFS.
No, but it's pretty cool. I remember that I just fixed something smaller there. That's why I know it. I also never read it, but yeah, it's
I
it's
also
like very
never read it.
interactive site. You can try immediately some call on in your browser.
Yeah, so if you go to, what is it? I think it's api.fullstack.cache. That's the API documentation for BCH API. So you can read through here and see all the different endpoints that is available, and then most of these endpoints are immediately, like, you can use this Explore BCHN page to exercise those endpoints and actually interact with the blockchain in real time. So at one point we brought up the BCH.js example. So I just wanted to point out here, I've got a link to this page. So all the NFT examples had broken in the move from SLPDB to PSF SLP indexer. These are all fixed now. So this, if you're a JavaScript developer, this is the best way to create and work with NFTs. So it has this introduction to, well, actually, probably anybody who wants to get started in NFTs, you should start by going to troutnfts.com and watch this first video, because this is a very high level introduction. And in there, I talk about this relationship between group tokens and NFT tokens, which is unique to Bitcoin Cash. And then there are these examples in here for creating a group token, minting new group tokens, sending group tokens, creating NFTs, and creating more NFTs. So if anybody wants to get started with now, this does not do the mutable data. There are other examples that I can point you to for creating NFTs with mutable data. Yeah, so anybody who wants to get started, the code exists and you get moving. But you kind of have to be a JavaScript developer right now. But that might be a good segue to skip down to this bounty.
One more question.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I remembered you also separated the examples in the sections for BCH, eCash. So is there some examples for the e-token, like the eCash based like NFT stuff?
No, there's not, but there should be. So yeah, if you go to the root directory here, there's BCH and then there's eCash, and there's only a handful of eCash specific examples. And really the only difference between eCash and BCH is the address format and the denomination. And those are really like, those don't really affect the low level code. Those are high level considerations. So really the code should work. And if someone just there's just a couple changes, tweaks you got to make to have it come out as an eCash address instead of a BCH address. So the only thing that needs to be done is just to make a slight tweak to the existing BCH code examples so that they come out with an eCash address.
Will they have also like with this new SLP indexer? It's a big change. So do they have the same functionality in eCash?
Yeah, there's api.fullstack.cache, and then I think it's abc.fullstack.cache is the eCash side version. So it's the same, everything's the same, but it's on the eCash blockchain. And there's even explore, well, it's actually, if you go to the top, it's you got this drop down, so you can go to the testnet's not functional, but the ABC side, I believe, is functional.
So you can create e-token from here, maybe.
Not from here, but
yes, in general, not from here.
Yeah. So basically, if you just go back to those NFT examples, so the first one you would, this is not what I wanted. Right here, NFT example. So the very first one you're going to run is here at the top, create NFT group token. Oops. Guess I need to update those links. Create group. And so the only change you really need to make here is change this from BCHN to ABC. and then it'll be talking on the ABC chain. And you'll still get a Bitcoin Cash address, but it should actually create NFTs on the eCash chain. And there, I have a couple PSF SLP indexers running on the eCash chain, so it should all be functional. This is part of what I have to like explore as I fork the DEX over to the eCash chain.
Yeah, because if we want to try the the DEX, it will be good to have like something on both chains, so we can do some interesting stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's so real quick. I'm going to skip down to the bottom here. Aaron Sundman has agreed to fund a bounty, which I'm going to take on, $300 in PSF tokens. And we're going to add these commands to the PSF BCH command line wallet for creating group tokens, creating NFTs, creating fungible tokens, minting new tokens, and sending batons. And then through this process, we also discovered that I was a little over eager, and I've only tested the wallet on the Web3 infrastructure. I know that it works on the Web2 infrastructure with one command line change, but I need to actually make that change so that you can easily, like in his case, he's running a cash stack, and so he wants to use his own infrastructure. He doesn't need to use the community Web3 infrastructure. We just need to add a configuration change to tell the wallet to do that.
Yeah, thanks for writing this up. This is a fantastic approach. I mean, this is one of those things that I've done a little bit in JavaScript, but I don't feel competent enough there to do it all in JavaScript. So this creates new abilities.
Yeah, well, and I want to tell the rest of the guys. So Aaron and I sat down, and he sort of showed me how he was using the software, and he's really leveraging the command line capabilities. So he's more comfortable programming in PHP, and so he can just execute a command line instruction, when an API call comes in. And I thought that was really creative and a really good use of the command line I mean, I tend to prefer the command line because there's Jerry's coming in a little late. I'll let Jerry come in. I prefer the command line because it's just faster to prototype. But I thought that I hadn't really considered that people might just use the command line because it's just it prevents you from having to write a lot of code, and then you can leverage code that's highly tested, and I think it's a really great use case.
Yeah, you've got a huge number of capabilities available on command line to this. So this is a fantastic opportunity.
Nice.
Aaron, if you know JavaScript, you can do a pull request reviews, in fact. Because, somebody will write the code, and you can see if there's some obvious errors there. And if there's no errors, you can just approve this request. And then we'll have two pair of eyes looking there.
Yep, always an option.
Yeah, absolutely. I am definitely getting into it more as I spend more time looking through all of this. So I appreciate that. I certainly will be over time.
Okay, going back to the agenda. So the examples. So a lot of NFT updates, and PSF BCH wallet and minimal SLP wallet, they were both updated to work with NFTs. It was a big change going from SLPDB to PSF SLP indexer. So there's a lot of software to update to reflect those changes. Minimal SLP wallet is, like I said, it's got these two. Here, 1 second. Oh, that's weird. I hear feedback, but I don't see where it's coming from. Oh, well. Thanks, Jerry. I think it was you. So minimal SLP wallet. This UTXO is valid, is used by BCH DEX. It's the only call that the DEX currently makes to fullstack.cash. Everything else can go through the Web3 infrastructure. So this was an important thing from that perspective, to get the DEX completely on the Web3 infrastructure with no dependence to fullstack.cash. It's just a call that tells you if a UTXO is still spendable or not, if it's in the mempool or not. And then get token data, that's a convenience call to get the mutable data associated with the token. And so the next few updates I'm going to go through, they're really focused on our governance. So this is a response to what we talked about last week with all the documentation at psfoundation.info. Is I'm really trying to, I really like sort of what we covered, and there was a general like approval of the governance process laid out in there. So now I've got to go through and actually make sure that we can put those decisions into action, and a lot of that has to do with refactoring this code and getting code working again that's broken. So the merit library is what we use to calculate merit, which is the quantity of PSF tokens times the number of days where they haven't moved. So that's how we calculate merit. And it's used by the VIP bot, and it's used in our governance for when we airdrop voting tokens. And so that's been updated. It's working now, and it works with the minimal SLP wallet, which means it can use either our Web 2 or our Web 3 infrastructure. And I've added PSF BCH wallet. I added a message sign and a message verify command. So for signing, cryptographically signing a message and cryptographically verifying a message, this is what we used to use message.fullstack.cash, the website. We used to use that to do this, but now we can do it with the command line wallet. So we don't have to worry about, I hope to restore that website someday, but that'll be a while. Because that brings us, I'm just going to skip down the VIP bot. I got the VIP bot working again in the VIP room. So in order for you all to talk there, we have to re-verify our merit. So you can use these new commands to sign a message. And I'm going to create a video and documentation for this, but that's going to take a minute. But just at a high level, the idea is you go into the bot and there's like a /help or /start command, and it'll tell you what to do. But you'll use this command to sign a message from an address holding PSF tokens to verify. Actually, let me just go through it. It might be a good demo. You guys can see my command line, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's see, PSF BCH wallet. I think it's called Sweet Invoices.
Maybe if you bring the terminal a little up will be good, because it's behind my Zoom buttons.
Oh, is it? Okay, let me, yeah.
Or just clean the screen maybe, and it will go on the first one.
Does that help? Can you see it now, Swam?
Better now.
All right, so I've got, oh, I think this is messed up from when I was helping you yesterday, Aaron.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we changed some of the comp.
What is it saying? Unexpected strict mode, reserved word. Okay, it was that extra little code snippet I added in there that it didn't like. Okay, so I've got a wallet here with 3,600 PSF tokens. And if I go to the VIP room, I can do /help. And so there's this verify address, verify Bitcoin Cash address and signed message. And you're signing a message with the word verify. And it's in here somewhere. Sign message. So I need to update this. So I guess it's good I'm showing you guys how to do this. So what I'm going to do is get the addresses for that wallet. And so I've got the address right here. And then that message disappeared. So I'm going to go verify BCH address, sign message. That's the bot command. And I've got this new message sign command. So I'm going to go message and run message sign. I'm using the Suite Invoices wallet. And the message I'm signing is the word verify.
Chris, is it better to work with the SOP addresses? Because we're now checking for tokens, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is the simple ledger addresses are ultimately get resolved to a Bitcoin Cash address or really a legacy address. So you can, I just generally don't, because I know that ultimately it's that Bitcoin Cash address that matters. The simple ledger address really only exists to help people not burn tokens.
Not burn, right? Yeah.
So it should work with simple ledger addresses, but sometimes it doesn't, just because like that feature hasn't been added. So we should be using simple ledger addresses when we're using tokens. In this case, we're sort of working around tokens. We're not working directly with tokens. We're just working with an address that has tokens.
Right.
So we need to send the message from a PSF BCH wallet, essentially.
Yeah. Well, right now you have to use that sign command. So you have to use PSF BCH wallet.
But we can sign a different wallet, which is what you just did.
Yeah. You're just creating a wallet. And then if you already have a wallet that has PSF tokens, you can import it into this program.
And if you have an Electron Cash, the SLP wallet, you can sign it through there too, right? I mean, because I've done signing on Electron
yes,
Cash. SLP
you can
wallet.
you can sign a message with Electron Cash SLP. Yeah, exactly. So anyways, so it's verify and then the Bitcoin Cash address. That doesn't look right. Oh, I guess that is right. And then the signature. And then now I'm verified, and now I can speak in the room, and the bot doesn't automatically delete everything I say. So that's basically the process. Clearly, there needs to be more documentation, and it needs to be a little smoother. But this isn't intended to be fully functional and easily usable right now. What I'm trying to do is just make sure that our governance infrastructure is in place, so that we can start to actually use it.
Excellent. Thank you. That's a great demo, actually. I think we can all at least go back to that.
Yeah. So so there's that. So we'll be able to start using the VIP room. There's some updates I need to make to PSF SLP indexer so that we can do the token voting process that we've done in the past. And then chat.fullstack.cache is kind of working. Like, it was completely broken, but at least now it's kind of working. So you can go there, and any two computers on Earth that go there will see one another. It'll spin up a IPFS node in the browser, set up an encrypted pub sub connection between the two computers. And I was surprised that I couldn't find an alternative. I couldn't just find a web page. Like, there's probably a dozen recommendations that I got from different people, and none of them were as simple as just going to a web page, two people going to a web page, and then they can have an encrypted chat with one another, with no sign up. And so I was really surprised that I couldn't find a substitute for that. So that's in place, because this is going to be, there's a couple things we're going to use chat.fullstack.cache with. One is it's our fallback in case we're ever deplatformed from Telegram. And we know we can always go to that to continue any needed governance or administration. And then second, I want to build a chatbot interface for our decks in the future. And so interfacing to chat.fullstack.cache would be a good way to sort of build a chatbot that's not dependent on Discord or Telegram, because they can certainly turn you off if they want to.
Yeah. So on the Telegram one, where was that documentation again? That for the verify and everything, was that in the Telegram channel?
Yeah, so it's in the Telegram channel. So it's the channel's PSF-VIP, and you can do help or start. We'll bring up that help menu. And only the verify command is working right now. I need to add the other commands. But right now, that's the only one that needs to work.
So we can verify, you put /verify in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we send a message do we send a message like back to ourselves?
You just put it into the group there. So, and you follow. Bring that back up. You follow this syntax. So /verify, a space, a Bitcoin cache address, a space, and then the signed message.
Okay. So I can just send a transaction to myself with the signed message, basically. And that's what
You
you're
don't
looking for.
need to send anything. The message in this case is just a string. You just bring it to this command line interface and sign it with the wallet.
Yeah. So the first step is get your PSF BCH wallet set up. And then if you already have an existing wallet, I can show you how to import that. And then you use this message sign command, and you're just signing the word verify.
Yeah, I think that the message word is a little misleading because message means sending. So that's why I think Aaron is confused. Okay, where to send this message? It's more like a string sign, or I don't know.
Yeah, this isn't actually generating a transaction. That's I think the disconnect is we're just signing a message with the private key, so we're not actually creating an on-chain transaction. Well, the last thing in the agenda here before we open it up, this FYI, the token liquidity app's been super flaky lately, and I've already refactored it to it's actually working fine. The problem is its connection to the fullstack.cache. It has a hard time with the JOT token. It forgets what it is. And some parts of the program don't know what it is when other parts of the program do. So that's the refactoring I had to do. So that's pretty much already done. And so that'll be up and more fully functional in the next week. It'll be a lot more smoother experience swapping BCH for PSF tokens. And these refactors, I'm doing it with an eye to what I'm hoping to do is that we'll get the DEX and the chatbot and the token liquidity app. They're essentially all REST APIs. So we'll have them able to talk to one another, and so they'll all be pieces of some larger app like the chatbot that'll let people trade tokens and buy and sell PSF tokens as needed. And then that'll all tie in with the minting council. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here. But yeah, that's the agenda. So I'll just open it up to general comments and questions. I know there was something that Aaron Shoemaker wanted to cover.
Oh, I was we got the clusters up. Let me turn my camera on here. We got 16 cluster nodes up and running and connected yesterday. They're just connected in 2 places. So we're going to start distributing those around the city pretty soon and running tests on them. I'm going over the servers JSON to figure out how to work things right. And then figure out how to tag things. They're not super clear on tagging, but you can essentially use tagging to say, I want to pin things, tag Chicago, tag this many times, and it'll go out and pin just in the Chicago area. And so you can narrow stuff down by that.
So yeah, so just to zoom out for a second, anybody who's not familiar with what you're working on, you're setting up IPFS cluster, which is a way to set up IPFS nodes that work together to collectively pin files. And you're trying to, so that's a thing that already exists. And you're trying to add to that to make it geographically focused so that like you can essentially like a CDN, so that you can talk to the node that's geographically closest to you. And then you're also trying to get it to run in a VR headset.
VR Android, I've got it running on the Android phone, and part of the reason for Android is it's 90% of the market. So literally, people can eventually we're going to try to make a Termux package that, I'm going to try to make a Termux package that wraps the IPFS cluster follow in it. So all you have to do is download Termux and then do package install IPFS cluster follow, and the rest is history. And essentially every phone on the planet can become a node serving and receiving data all over the place. And then headsets can become that. Arduinos can become that. Raspberry Pis can become that. Your old Kindle can become that. All this old tech can now be repurposed as nodes on a cluster network. And then we have to figure out about, like, one of the reasons we want to use SLP and the NFTs is, like you were talking about in our conversations, having to bypass static IPs. Because right now, when you bootstrap with IPFS, you bootstrap to their San Francisco servers. Unless you go in and specifically say, I want to bootstrap to something else, bootstrap, here's my other multi-address, you will always bootstrap to their servers. Now, here's the issue we've found is that because we've now bootstrapped 16, 17, 18 machines, they're not all on their own peer list. Like we've had to go in and specifically say IPFS, Swarm Connect, and the multi-address of that machine. And the reason they're not on the peer list is because when you bootstrap, it does two things. It hole punches your NAT, which means it opens up a TCP port on your NAT but to do that, you have to have an address out there in the wild that you're sending a message to. Then once it hole punches your NAT, that one address out there sees yours and says, here's the addresses you have. And so it can even tell you that your IP has changed or anything like that, what your IP is. And then it also gives you a peer list. And so if it's out in San Francisco, it's going to give you a peer list from San Francisco, what they're connected to, which runs into issues when you really like to start up and say you're in Washington, have nodes that are around Washington. And I think, Aaron, you're in Ohio, like have nodes that are starting up around Ohio. So eventually we want to go into where we release IPFS inits where you can say IPFS init Chicago, and you're going to bootstrap to Chicago nodes, IPFS. And then the same goes with here, I'll just share my screen real quick. And I think I got the follower JSON pulled up, so I can show you kind of what's in there.
Yeah, go for it. So this problem that Aaron's talking about is, like, every IPFS based project has this problem where you can either use the public network, which has its trade-offs, or you can do a private network, which has its own trade-offs. And so with IPFS Cord, I've chosen to do a private network. But you always have this bootstrap problem. If you don't want to use the public network and use the publicly, but even like, if, we like to think about adversarial situations and, what happens if you try and spin up an IPFS node in the middle of mainland China, and, those sorts of things. Like, so it's an interesting thought experiment to talk about different ways to approach this bootstrapping problem.
Yeah, I think we're going to find some solutions and looking at bootstrapping and distributing specific bootstraps for people. This right here is the JSON, and
Can you expand your text?
Yeah. Hold on.
Control plus.
So here's the JSON. This is the cluster secret, and I'll just drop this in the PSF chat. So like if we're ready for, if you want to jump on and try to run a follow, that's totally cool. We've got enough nodes up that that if you run the service, it's not going to be a big deal because you're not a trusted peer. So this is the contract that we're messing with. Of course, it used 9096. Okay, the high water and low water, this actually does need to be this high for the cluster, because it's about how many cluster peers you're connecting to. So if you're running a cluster, you want to be able to connect to a certain amount of peers. If we eventually we have 10,000, that means the most you're going to connect to is 400. The least you're going to connect to is 100. And you got that grace period. And then we definitely need to experiment with some of this timeout, because we are getting some issues and with timeout, but we also have a bunch of machines running on just 2 networks. So we need to get them out in the wild and figure out, okay, if there's just one machine per network, which is going to be more of a real world use case, does it work better? Do we need to adjust this timeouts and stuff like that? This is just trusted peers. This literally is who can pin to the cluster. So eventually we want to have an application like nft.storage or something like that, where that's automated and you can pin, but we can change this eventually as we switch out, and we're going to do that with like SLP tokens, mutable SLP tokens. So you actually erase the APIs for the follow, because the follow program will add the APIs, which means I kind of got to go into the code and look at it, because I've had Windows machines have problems with this 5001 port. I have no idea why, but sometimes Windows just doesn't want to connect to itself through the local host through 5001. No idea. Just
It's a pretty common port that's used by a lot of applications.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And I was thinking something's using it up. Here's the real interesting thing that I'm trying to understand. So this is the allocator, and this is something you can pass into the command line when you pin. So you do IPFS cluster control add or pin add, and then you can do -allocate, and then you can allocate by free space, which is a function of which all the nodes send metrics of how much free space they have available. So you pin to the ones with the freest amount of space. And then this tag group, if you come down here, you can set different groups. So you could set Chicago or Omaha or stuff like that. I just got to figure out exactly how you tag it, because their example of it is we have a region and availability zone, and we want to tag in every region and once in every availability zone, and so we hit region and availability zone. So we need to do like Chicago, but here's the difficult part. This JSON, if this is going to be group, Chicago, whatever, that needs to run only on the Chicago nodes. This is where the identifier happens, so that when I'm as the cluster control call allocation Chicago, it goes to only these nodes that say, hey, I'm Chicago. I'm in the group of Chicago.
Yeah, so this reminds me of that config file that you used to set up to configure an IPFS node. And
yep.
This is what I love about this is that it's JSON, it's human readable, and it's easy to reason about. and but because it's a JSON file, it's like it only gets read at startup, and it's not a dynamic thing. You can't
Yeah.
change it, while the node's running. You have to shut the node down, change the file, start it back up.
Yep.
So if we were able to, in the IPFS cord takes a different approach to this, in that it's there's more dynamic things. It reaches out and gets like bring this back to the bootstrap problem. It has two nodes that are hard coded, and so it will automatically try to connect to those first.
Yeah.
And then there's this like graded approach. So then the second step is to download a list from GitHub. So that's an example of like on the fly sort of changing its configuration based on the contents of this file that it downloads.
Mhm.
And so like the next step would be to like use these NFTs and the mutable data so that it could, then you could really get dynamic behavior with like your geographic coordinates changing and your IP addresses are changing.
Yes. And so like there's multiple problems here that I think the NFTs can solve. One of them is bootstrap static IPs, because instead of using DuckDNS, which we're going to use initially just to SSH into these machines when we get them out in the wild. But eventually what we want to do for machines that we control is run a program in which when the IP changes, it broadcasts transaction to that mutable token, and we can look at that to find the IP address and SSH into the machines, fix them, reboot them, do whatever we need to do. Then the other problem is bootstrapping. So that's another one we talked about, using NFTs, where, all right, when the bootstrap node changes its dynamic IP, it would do the same thing, but then the service JSON file that everybody uses to bootstrap to the cluster would then look at that IPFS address, and then which would look at the token and look at the most recent transaction and grab the multi-address from that, and that's what it bootstraps from. That way we would have no centralization of bootstrapping, and it could be done, from anywhere. And all we have to do is change, we can even change the service JSON and have that be a token. So like if you want to download, if we have a new service JSON, we just do the same thing where you go to the CID, it looks at a token, looks at the most recent address for a new CID and says, this is the new JSON, we're going to bootstrap to that, or we're going to run that. So like we might send a message out and say, hey, we fixed a few things on the follow node, go to this address and change what's nice about the follow, actually I should show that one too. The follow, just I'll open it up. Dealing in Windows environments with this stuff is also fun. Okay, IPFS cluster follow. Open with, oh, that's the wrong one. All right, so let me go back to share my screen here. Okay, so you can see that the cluster follow, instead of having that whole service JSON, it actually goes out to the CID right here and pulls it in when it initializes. Like every time you start up the node, it goes to this CID and bootstraps it essentially. So if we put in at that CID the type of thing you're talking about, where we can use mutable data on IPFS that looks at a token for the updated CID, then we have a way to update these service JSONs whenever we need, and we don't have to communicate to everybody and say, hey, everybody you change to this now. It would literally, we just broadcast the token, and every time they reboot their node, they'd have the fresh update. Oh, you're muted, Chris.
Thanks. Yeah, the trick there is a lot of airplane activity today. The trick there is getting the IPFS node access to the Bitcoin Cash blockchain, and but we've largely solved that problem with our Web3 infrastructure, because you can actually talk to a global backend directly over IPFS. But I mean, the devil's in the details.
Yeah, and one of the things we plan on doing here in Omaha as well is setting up a cash stack, and like, because part of the end goal of this is, okay, we can now sell people websites in Web3, and then like to local companies, local businesses, and part of it can be, hey, you don't have to pay for it, just stick this node in your back room, and now we got another cluster. And then we just SSH in, maintain it, do whatever we need to. And then as you sell websites or services, it's just like, here's another node, here's another node, and so the cluster can grow that way. And then the other way the cluster can grow is when people run nodes, the idea is to use tokens to reward them for running nodes. And then it costs you tokens to pin. So then you have the chance to pin, and then if somebody doesn't want to run the node, they could use the DEX to buy the tokens off of you to go ahead and pin.
Well, so one of the standards I want to create at some point is this idea that's been rattling around in my head, is this proof of payment idea, where, like, so in fullstack.cash, you create an account and you buy a JOT token. And then when you make an API call, you put that JOT token in the header, and that's essentially your proof of payment. But with that scheme, which is a web standard, you have an authorization server that produces the JOT tokens.
Yeah.
You could actually follow almost that exact same workflow, but you don't need an authorization server. You could just burn some PSF tokens, and instead of a JOT token, you just have an address, a signed message, and a transaction ID. And you could even put that on IPFS and just pass a CID in the header in order to like have a minimum amount of information that you need. And then you could interact with any of these IPFS nodes independently, and like say to pin a piece of content.
Yeah. And
you can prove that, hey, in the last 24 hours, I burned a PSF token. And then each node can independently verify that, and like that's essentially your proof of payment.
Yeah,
without having an auth server or like it's a decentralized way to do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. That's those are things that we want to implement, and right now it's just like being in the weeds and dealing with the different machines. And like I've been running stuff on Windows, I've been running stuff on Androids. We're getting a Mac to run it on Mac, and then we want to try to run it on iOS. And so we really want to get it to where our cluster works on any machine. You can join this cluster from any machine, because the point is eventually like a decentralized metaverse. That's the point. Like if we have this cluster with enough nodes and it's fast enough, and latency, like another thing we got to do is I've been pouring through the code on latency, and something that's interesting is in the desktop they have a function to write to log time, like time of a message. So like you can actually see how much latency you have to other nodes. That's not available in the client wallet as far as I've seen. Like it's so what I'd also like to do with this is be able to say, okay, we're going to go, when we do a get, because this is more on the IPFS side, when we do an IPFS get, it sends out the want list. But the problem is when you're bootstrapped to San Francisco, your want list could be going out to nodes far away from you. If like Stoyan, for instance, tried to pull something from Stan, when he's trying to pull that, he's sending out his want list. But if he's bootstrapped to the San Francisco nodes, he could be sending out to, England, and the East Coast of America. And so that latency is taking a while. And if they don't have it, then they're sending out to whoever they're bootstrapped to. And so you're adding to this latency. So that's where the local bootstraps make sense. And then when you send out that want list, what happens is I think there needs to be a program that says, all right, we've got 5 nodes and we, based on their latency, we're going to send you the packets of the CID you requested.
Mm-hmm.
So
IPFS core does something like this where, so it bootstraps. I've talked about there's the hard code bootstrap, and then there's the dynamic list from GitHub that it downloads. But then it is all because the nodes connect to one another through circuit relays. So there's 2 types of nodes. There's like your normal node, and then there's a circuit relay node, and they're treated separately and they're kept in separate lists. And so the node's always looking for additional circuit relays. And so when it finds one on the network that it doesn't know about, it adds it to the list. And then it's every few minutes, it's measuring the latency between it and all the circuit relay nodes that it knows about. And then it creates an ordered list. And so anytime it wants to talk to another node on the network, it tries first with the circuit relay with the lowest latency. And then if that call fails, it goes down the list until it connects.
Did you write that code yourself, or did you have?
Yeah. This is part of gets back to like this is not something that's built into IPFS. So this was something I had to add on top.
Okay, so I'll look at the chord library for that and see if I can integrate that. And I think I'm just gonna have to fork IPFS's code and mess with it and go. And I'll use your JavaScript stuff as a baseline to see how I can do it and go.
Yeah. I mean, you're trying to solve a lot of these problems that I've spent some time thinking about. It's like, I don't know if I have the best solution. I have like a solution.
Well, their JavaScript side is definitely not as maintained as their Go side, which you mentioned,
Yeah. And that's why it's nice being able to drive a node with IPFS cord and add any features we need.
Okay, can we talk real quick about some of the stuff that is not really well known about what benefit PSF is bringing to the NFT space, and how Smart BCH could start to work with this? Can we just go through a couple of things on that bit? I mean, one of the things that I don't think is really well known is that the security risk that account-based NFTs are accepted to, like when Seth Green lost his NFTs, because UTXO based NFTs have a lot more security. Like even Punk 6529 said everyone, or a lot of people, should have multiple ledgers, each for every one of their NFTs, because they're afraid the account based thing is easy to lose them. As soon as you sign a transaction, you might lose everything in your, and because PSF is focused toward UTXO based NFTs, they're a lot more secure. From signing a transaction, you're actually signing just for those UTXOs. So I feel like there's a lot that people don't know that is really valuable that we're bringing to the table in terms of security based. And then I also had the question I have on when do we think Smart BCH should be brought into the PSF, or should it ever be? We saw issues recently, and I know Stoyan's brought so many great things to the table about Smart BCH, and I'm also super glad that we did eCash and AVAX, right? Those are fantastic ones. So just positioning all this in place, I don't think everyone knows that sometimes the account-based NFTs are really problematic, and I think our approach is going to bring some really more secure, solid piece to SLP NFTs.
Yeah, I don't know if the security difference lies in the UTXO versus account based. I think it really comes down to just basic hygiene around your keys. This is more of a user thing because everybody uses MetaMask. So if in MetaMask makes it really hard to have multiple accounts. Like I think we've all had this experience where your MetaMask wallet starts getting huge because you've got so many accounts, and it's a pain in the ass to try and figure out which blockchain you're connected to and which account are you using.
And if you have to put Ethereum each one, you have to pay Ethereum gas to put them so that they can be associated with that, right?
Yeah. Whereas the workflow that I've always tried to encourage people to adopt is put your tokens on a paper wallet and get them off of your wallet, and then they're essentially in cold storage at that point, and then bring them off the wallet, on an as needed basis. But at the end of the day, like if you have multiple tokens, whether it's UTXO or account based, there's going to be an address with a private key, and so if anybody gets access to that, now the Ethereum based hacks, a lot of those are based around, there's all these new standards where you have to like approve a token transaction before you actually make the token transaction, or signing a message with the same key that has like expensive NFTs on it, and that's where these hacks occur. But I think that would happen whether it was UTXO based or account based. It's okay. Really, I think it's more of a failure of the user experience and specifically MetaMask. I don't know. Do you guys have any other thoughts on that?
No, accounts we see UTXO, it does not, it does not improve security, but it will improve maybe when you do something with your MetaMask. If some transaction is stuck, you cannot do anything. You just need to wait for this. But with UTXO, even if one of the payment is stuck, you can continue making other payments because it will be different UTXO. So for this, it will be better.
Yeah,
the smart contract risk, though. The smart contract risk.
I think everybody is just doing like multi-sig for increasing the security. If you need to sign something with 2 keys, even if it's UTXO or the like account transaction, it's better security, in fact. So I think.
But it feels like also you add multiple keys. Now you're increasing the size of the transaction, which increases the gas cost and everything else. It feels like there's a lot that goes along with that.
With this Polygon and other EVM compatible blockchains, adding multi-sig, does not adding multi-sig because it's too expensive. It's just not like a good argument, because if you want to protect you, boring ape, you will
boring ape.
spend some thing on gas. But
Okay, I just want to bring that up because I feel like there's a lot I think the addition of eCash and AVAX as a part of the PSF has been a great thing, because there's so many pieces that align on since Smart BCH and even Bitcoin.com with Verse has brought in Smart BCH. When do we feel like, or do we ever feel like it'll be something that we'd like to start to add in to consideration of that?
Well, I'm not against it at all. I'm personally not. What I'm personally waiting for, like I love, when Stoyan does stuff with Slack. I mean, there's no reason not to use Smart BCH. It's just that on a personal level. So one of the things that has been a hang up for me is the validators. There was only 3 validators because you had to be a mining node in order to be a validator, and then that dropped down to like 2. Wow. And so there was only 2 validators for a long time, but just recently in the last week, and I don't even think this was officially announced because I think it all kind of happened backdoor to get started with, but they've apparently switched to proof of stake, and now there's like 6 or 7 validators. I don't know what the stake level is. I don't know any of the details, but someone showed a screenshot of like, now there's like several validators, and one of the validators was like Satoshi's Angels, and they don't have they're not very technical, that group, and but they do have stake, and so I don't have any detail, but it's also it's a good thing, but it's also a red flag, because this is what I've noticed with Smart BCH is it's like all of a sudden somebody decided that this whole architecture has just changed, and so that's like, whoa, like like that's a big red flag, even if it's a positive change.
Let's see, Smart BCH were more like a political solution. So they was talking about bringing the EVM compatible, smart contract engineers and users. That's why they created it, like Smart BCH. But if you want to have this kind of stuff, there's so many other which are already like working. And now with AVAX, they have pretty nice EVM, like C chain is pretty working. So, and
Yeah.
what was stopping me, I was using Smart BCH because it's really cheap. And for the new projects, it's nice, but there's no tools in general. Every nice tool around which all of the other EVM engineers can use, like this, the graph that I was talking, the multi-sig wallet, everything is working on, for example, on C chain, on AVAX, but it does not work on Smart BCH. So if you want to use it, you need now to add it by it yourself. But it's not easy. These guys, they don't support this chain and all. So it's not so much like, I don't know, like chain is better, something. I think the missing tools is one of the big problems.
Yeah. If we wanted to leverage the capability of an EVM chain, and the decision was simply to go with whatever the best EVM chain is, I would be more inclined to go with Avalanche C chain than Smart BCH. For all the reasons that Stoyan just said, and also just because of the sort of architectural, infrastructural red flags that I've seen.
Right.
I mean, I'm still trying to pay attention to it, and I'm optimistic. It's just like, as a business decision, I don't think it's there.
Well,
If you want to transfer tokens, for example, between chains, like with side shift or something, for AVAX, it's there. You can start now, today.
Yeah. Plus, Avalanche has like USDC and USDT, and Smart BCH, like Flex USD. Like, I don't want to have more than $1,000 of Flex. I just don't trust them. But USDC, I'm developing quite a bit of trust with that, and there's all sorts of. We haven't talked very much about it, but I use the Teddy, which is kind of like DAI on X chain, where you can loan yourself, like you can stake AVAX and get a US dollar equivalent, and then basically take a loan out to yourself, an over collateralized loan.
I found better thing.
Yeah, and I think there's better things to use too.
Jerry's on the bus. He says thoughts.
More money.
Jerry says thoughts on risk or other cross-chain platforms. He was just throwing that.
RSK. I don't know much about RSK and other cross-chain. So I know that the Avalanche Ethereum bridge is pretty cool. It's different than other bridges in that it uses like embedded hardware technology in the computers, and so I don't really know many more details beyond that, but I really like their bridge. I think their bridge has been really thought out.
Burn bridge or a wrap bridge?
I think it's a wrap bridge, but I don't really know. I don't know much about their
all these. We're coining new terms right now. Just like Story and I call them bathies and QMs now.
But yeah, anyways, I mean, I'm really like, I think I've told you guys, like one of my goals is to build a bridge between the PSF token on Bitcoin Cash and USDCE on the Avalanche C chain, so that you can easily convert between a stable coin and because low transaction fees, reliable stable coin, and reliable EVM chain. So,
by the way, I think cash scripts and forced outputs can be leveraged for any bridges. Jerry says.
The enforced outputs would be cool. I will. So here's the thing. Here's another thing that I would love to look into, but I know I'm not going to have the bandwidth for. Speaking of cash script, is I'd love to figure out how to create an unspendable output. And basically it's just passing op false, so that a UTXO cannot be spent. And if we could do that, then we can make soul-bound tokens, which I think makes a lot more sense for like the social media use case. Like, because if you have an NFT that represents a person's, identity, you don't necessarily want them to be able to transfer it to a new address. You want it to basically be associated with that address for all time. And so that would be a use case for like a soulbound token. And we could create soulbound tokens on BCH if we can make unspendable UTXOs.
Right. Nathan J was asking a couple of questions. I'm not sure Smart BCH is going anywhere, but the utility and use case plus users, it's worth paying attention. So that's why I think I agree with that. And he also, there's another comment, Chris will DM, which I'm not sure what DM stands for in this case, getting the SLP torch sorted.
Oh yeah, direct message. Yeah. Nathan's trying to send me the SLP torch. I was pretty stoked that thing still exists. Yeah, so the SLP torch was a token. It was like the first NFT. It's a quantity one, no decimals and no minting baton. And so it's been getting passed around over the years. And it was something we created very early on when SLP was first created. I assumed it got burned somewhere along the way, but I guess it's still alive.
Awesome.
And, so Nathan's trying to pass it to me, and yeah, I'm going to pass it to you guys if I get my. But I agree with what Nathan said, in that Smart BCH is going up in terms of utility and use cases. Like, I'm glad that I'm glad that so many people in the Bitcoin Cash space are focused on it and are making it better, and I wish them nothing but luck. I'm also really happy that all the sort of hype chasers are focused on Smart BCH and have left the SLP space, so that the real people with real like businesses and business ideas can just really work and not have all this distraction. So I think it's all good stuff. I like the direction everything's heading in. Yeah, Jerry says that, yeah, it should be pretty easy to write a cash script that can't be spent. Theoretically, it should be fairly easy. So if we can come up with a proof of concept for that, then it's I think I can import that script into the Bitcore cache library like I did for the multisig stuff. And so I can generate a partial transaction with BCH.js and the proper op return for an SLP token. And then finish that transaction with Bitcore, which can take a cache script and integrate it and create a pay to script hash transaction. And I think we just actually had the scripts like that from cache script to plug in there. I think we could do this. I think it would be totally possible to build a soulbound NFT on Bitcoin Cash. And with this mutable data, I think it's really like there's some there. There's like, I can think of particularly anything that involves social media or an identity on the blockchain that you don't want to have it move. Like that's the difference.
And it's not stuck because it has mutable data associated, whereas that's not been something that's really adopted.
So you can change the data, but you can't move the token that is like the container for the data.
Hey guys, I gotta bow out. I gotta take my girls swimming lessons. So
yeah, sounds good. We should wrap this up. It's been an hour and a half.
I love the conversation on soulbound tokens on BCH, and I think there's a lot of use cases here. And as we continue to develop this cluster, love to tie in everything we're doing and make it so that people can start building that next layer upon all this stuff, because I think that's what's coming. The pieces are falling into place.
Yeah. Well, cheers, guys. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. Is there any final thoughts anybody wants to throw out there? All right.
May the force be with you.
Yeah, cheers.
We'll see you on Friday, Stoyan, for Roots Up. And I don't know, Chris, if you got time, you want to join us?
Yeah, if I have time. I don't think I'm going to have time. There's a lot of I don't know what's going on this weekend. I'm getting pulled in a lot of different directions right now.
And anybody out there that's Devin, the PSF or anything like that, feel free to hit us up through PSF or the Roots Up chat, and we'd love to get you on and go through some code.
Yeah, cheers. All right, guys. Thanks for joining. We'll see you.